It's always a bittersweet moment when a fighter retires, and one of the biggest names in the sport made her final appearance in the octagon at UFC 275. After suffering a knockout loss to Zhang Weili, former UFC women's strawweight champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk made a retirement announcement. Keep watching for everything you need to know about the 115-pound division. First up, one of the most loved fighters of all time. If she didn't get knocked out by that brutal spinning back fist, Jedrzejczyk was set to receive a title opportunity if she defeated Zhang. In her post-fight interview with UFC analyst Daniel Cormier, JJ announced her retirement after taking off her gloves. "It's been 20 years, Jedrzejczyk told DC after the fight. "I'm turning 35 this year. I want to be a mom. I want to be a businesswoman. I've been training for more than half of my life. I love you guys." She's an absolute legend in her division and really put the strawweight division on the map. Between 2015 and 2017, Joanna successfully defended the UFC women's strawweight title 5 times, which is still a record for the category. The first strawweight champion from Poland shares the record for the most victories, 10 in the division's history, with current champion Carla Esparza. She also has the most championship fights, 9, and title fight victories in the division's history, 6. In what has been dubbed the greatest women's MMA fight of all time, Jedrzejczyk lost her last bout to Zhang after split decision at UFC 248 in March 2020. Now that fight's an absolute must-watch for any MMA fan, and it truly shows you what Joanna was capable of. She'll be leaving the UFC with a 10-5 record. So how did the fight go? Before the sad end to the fight, the two talented women were prepared to give the fans another fight worth remembering. Even though Joanna hadn't been inside the octagon in 2 years, she seemed to be in good shape, and her leg kicks were giving Weili some trouble. But the former champ, Weili, isn't one to back off either, and she used all her skills and strengths to counter. In a knockout that no one expected, Zhang turned and fired the spinning back fist that broke Jedrzejczyk and knocked her to the ground, just as the competitors were getting into another intense exchange. At 2 minutes and 28 seconds into the second round, the fight was promptly declared over. After suffering 2 straight defeats to Rose Namajunas, Weili recovered to become just the second combatant to ever finish JJ. Magnum called JJ a warrior, and that she'd practiced extremely hard to make sure she came to the ring prepared. Now, a fan favorite. Joanna was fun, a trash talk queen, and she had an entertaining fighting style, making her an instant fan favorite. After making her UFC debut in 2014, the Polish fighter won over fans with her charm and striking-based fighting style. At UFC 185 in March 2015, the multiple-time Muay Thai world champion defeated Esparza to win the championship. Even before the fight and before taking home the belt, she advised American supporters who had trouble pronouncing her last name to just refer to her as Joanna Champion. Well, that nickname fits her perfectly, because even if she didn't win in her last fight, she's always won the hearts of her fans. Following JJ's statement, the UFC community showed its support, with athletes paying homage to the icon. Fans around the world took to Twitter, and so much love and well wishes flooded in for the veteran fighter. Even Michael Bisping discussed his feelings, talking about how Joanna said maybe to retiring if she lost at UFC 275, according to a chat Bisping had with her before her fight in Singapore. Safe to say, everyone in that arena was reeling from these events. Even though Zhang Weili's knockout in Saturday's pay-per-view bout was remarkable, there was an instant worry for Jedrzejczyk's safety and an emotional tribute following her choice. Our beloved Joanna Champion is bound for the UFC Hall of Fame, so maybe in the future, she'll have to tell her fans to call her Joanna UFC Hall of Famer instead. So what's next for the strawweight division? Joanna leaving also makes us wonder, who's going to fight for the title next? Weili immediately focused on reigning 115-pound champion Carla Esparza in the hopes of meeting her at the UFC Abu Dhabi. Since the victory puts her in a position to run for UFC Gold once more, she called out the current champ to fight in a neutral territory in October. But as it turns out, UFC strawweight champion Esparza won't agree to fight with her at UFC 281 in Abu Dhabi as she recovers from injuries. Esparza makes a strong case for their fight and acknowledges Weili's forward-thinking mentality, but the defending champion is still struggling with persistent injuries from the fallout of her controversial title victory over Rose Namajunas Nunes at UFC 274 in April. Put simply, the timing just doesn't work for the Cookie Monster. Experience has given the champ the perseverance she needs to return to the cage and face Weili. When Esparza defeated Namajunas, she broke the record for the greatest gap between UFC title reigns by reclaiming the championship 2,618 days after her initial run had started in December 2014. Next, Carla Esparza isn't going to be rushed into the fight. When we look at her initial reign at the top, it was pretty short-lived. Esparza turned her career around in just 3 months after winning the first ever 115-pound title at the Ultimate Fighter 20 finale. It didn't last because Jon easily won the title at UFC 185 in March 2015 with a lopsided second-round TKO. The 34-year-old won't feel rushed into accepting a bout while her health isn't at its best. It took Esparza more than 7 years to get another championship fight inside the cage. Now that she's back on top of the mountain, she's going to take her time getting ready for the difficult obstacle ahead of her. Esparza doesn't think her recovery period will be very long, unless her MRI scans reveal bad news. She has every intention of fighting in 2022, and is mentally preparing for Weili even if she isn't physically ready to start a training camp. She acknowledged that the battle will be challenging because she's aware of the threat the former champion poses, and she said so with the same respect that Weili had shown her after she had defeated Jedrzejczyk. Now, in other news, Mackenzie Dern wants a shot at interim title. Mackenzie Dern is absolutely interested in competing against Zhang Weili for the interim strawweight title if the UFC decides to establish one. Of course, like we just talked about, Esparza doesn't plan on taking a break for too long. She recently talked to Damon Martin of MMA Fighting that she'd be prepared to defend before the end of the year once she received the findings of 2 MRIs on her thumb and was given the all-clear to resume training. Still, temporary championships have been set while champions recover from injuries, so an interim title could make sense here. So it makes sense that Dern has started to lay the groundwork for being given the chance. Dern's aware that Weili would be the better side of any prospective temporary title matchup because she was named the division's top challenger, but the Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert is waiting to take on the former champion if the UFC needs to match her up with a challenger. And this isn't the first time the 29-year-old showed an interest in fighting Magnum. Maybe this time the fight may actually happen. We'll have to wait and see how Dana approaches the strawweight title now. Next, Miesha Tate versus Lauren Murphy removed from UFC 276 card. The fight between Miesha Tate and Lauren Murphy that was originally scheduled for UFC 276 will now have to wait. Murphy had to withdraw from the fight for unknown reasons, according to numerous accounts. Prior to being postponed, Tate and Murphy's battle was initially scheduled for May 14th. The flyweight fight is anticipated to be rescheduled for a later time. Israel Adesanya will face Jared Cannonier for the middleweight championship at UFC 276 on July 2nd at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Alexander Volkanovski will face Max Holloway for the featherweight belt in the co-main event. This past July, Tate made her comeback after a 5-year hiatus, defeating Marion Renault in the 3rd round via technical knockout at UFC on ESPN 26. Since losing to Valentina Shevchenko in a flyweight title fight at UFC 266 via 4th round TKO, Murphy hasn't featured in any fights. Up next, Juliana Pena thinks Talia Santos won against Valentina Shevchenko. First, Amanda Nunes, and now Valentina. The people's favorites have shown there's a huge chink in their armor. At UFC 275, Valentina Shevchenko defeated Talia Santos to successfully defend her women's flyweight championship, but Juliana Pena claims the Brazilian fighter made enough of an effort to defeat the current championship holder. The UFC women's bantamweight champion admitted in her interview with the Schmo that Santos defeated Shevchenko while having one eye damaged. After 25 minutes of action, Valentina Shevchenko won by split decision and successfully defended her championship. But this wasn't like the rest of her one-sided fights. Many in the MMA community were stunned because Santos did enough to win the first 3 rounds. Her takedowns and submission attempts were superior to the champs, and Santos's performance was even more impressive because an accidental headbutt during the fight damaged the Brazilian's orbital bone, impairing her eyesight in one eye. She was able to fight the current champion for the whole whole 5 rounds though. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching.